In a world enamored by Hollywood, its celebrities, their paradigms and ideals, is this where it's at? Join me each week as we discover the deeper meaning, an alternate spark to Hollywood's love, paparazzi, relationships, and empowerment. Yes, my friend, I am sparked by Hollywood. Hollywood claims a stage for empowerment. They claim that celebrities will show us how. They will be our prime examples. And yet, isn't there more? We have celebrities amongst us, neighbors, friends, who have a potent story, a strong voice of empowerment as they inspire, help, and change the lives of those around them. Something far beyond what Hollywood can produce. Welcome to the Sparked by Hollywood Empower series. Thank you for joining today's second empowerment episode of the Sparked by Hollywood podcast. It's my pleasure to have a very special guest on today's podcast. Miriam Grunhaus is the founder and CEO of Mikah Fashion. She's also the author of Heal with Gold. She's a life coach and an all-around inspirational person. Miriam, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this episode, like I mentioned, is the second part or part two of my empowerment series. And I knew when I first spoke with you that you would be the perfect person to speak on this topic. You're a coach, you're a fashion designer, and there's so much I want to unpack in this episode. So if you can please tell my audience a little bit about yourself, about your brand, what you do, and how your brand empowers women.
So I started Mikah Fashion about 8 years ago. And in the beginning, I started this career because I wanted to be very, very busy to numb my personal pain because I was going through an adversity at that time. And the work that I had done previously, it was so easy for me and fast, and I didn't feel challenged. And I thought if I change careers, I'm going to be so busy, I'm not going to think about my pain, which I don't recommend doing that. But that's what I did at the time. The brand at that time, it was regular fashion. I was doing a lot of travel apparel. I wanted to do pieces that could be worn many different ways. So when people packed for a trip, they can pack light. But I noticed right away that I was not feeling fulfilled. And that is where I started considering, well, if I'm not a real fashion designer, I didn't go to fashion for school, fashion is not my passion, how did I enter this world of fashion? The numbing of my pain and being busy, it was an excuse to enter this career. I think that our lives lead us to where we need to be for a reason. So I had to do some thinking and figure out how come I entered the world of fashion when I'm not your typical fashion designer or fashionista.
Interesting. So it's not your background. It just kind of evolved that way.
Correct. My background is advertising, design, and marketing. 5 years, I did ethics and compliance for pharmaceutical work. So I designed their program from just marketing pieces, posters, brochures, logos, to educational material, to training, to coaching, to speaking in public. So that career evolved and grew in 25 years. So then, interestingly enough, as I'm trying to think, how did I come into fashion? How did that happen? Why am I not feeling any purpose? I'm not feeling that I'm fulfilling my potential. Somebody sent me a video. It was this Thai man who told the story of the art of Kintsugi, and it explained what the art meant. And for your viewers who do not know what Kintsugi is, it's the Japanese art of mending pottery. So when pottery breaks, instead of throwing it out, they mend it. There is a very specific way of doing so. But the interesting part of the art is that you embellish the breaks with gold, making the piece very expensive, valuable, but also very strong. So when this young man was explaining the art, my reaction after I saw it is, I want to be Kintsugi. I want to heal my wounds. I want to become whole again. I understand that I'm going to be different. I want to be stronger. I want to be wiser, more valuable. I want to be Kintsugi. And wow, why don't I use my brand to empower women to embody this method of healing, not be ashamed of whatever happened to them in their lives, and do the work to put themselves back together. And sometimes, you know how we have to wear a smile to feel happy. Sometimes we need to do that. So sometimes we wear Kintsugi to do the work, because it takes time, and it takes a very specific way. If you want to heal the Kintsugi way, it takes a very specific method to do so. And that is how, I became passionate about Kintsugi, because, as I said, I wanted to become Kintsugi. So at the same time that I was designing my first collection that looked Kintsugi, I started learning the method of Kintsugi, how you mend the pottery, what it means to translate that into a healing method. And then it developed from there. With the years, I started coaching in the method of Kintsugi, of healing. I interviewed for 3 years women who had really gone through tremendous adversities, tragedies. Some of their stories are hard to even remember. They were horrific, some cases, but they are thrivers. And I wanted to know from them how they became thrivers. And by interviewing them, I saw that all of them were doing the same steps, in essence, in different orders, maybe a little different ways, but they were really doing the same steps, all the steps that it takes to put a Kintsugi piece back together.
Wow.
It's that they didn't know that really there is a logic to this madness.
Fascinating. And when you're talking, it just all resonates so well with me, because it's like you said, there's a movement out there. There's a huge movement of PTSD and speaking about your troubles and speaking about your past and this is who I am. But I think there's an emerging method which is coming out, an emerging sense of awareness that you can use your story, you can use your scars to grow from, and actually use your scars as gold. If you can just talk a little bit more about what the method is when they mend those pieces of pottery, and how you use that method in your coaching, and maybe how that applies also to your fashion, because like you said, the woman who is wearing those clothing, she's embodying that message. So if you can talk a little bit more of that, so my audience really understands what Kintsugi is all about.
Sure. There's a lot of people out there saying, fake it till you make it. But in Kintsugi, you really honor the brokenness. And we do need to find that balance of honoring our brokenness and not staying there for too long, and starting the process of mending. We don't know how to grieve. We're not taught how to grieve. What does grieving look like? And it is different for different people, but there is a certain amount of time that you grieve in a way, and then you start the healing process. I actually always love to compare this. In the Jewish faith, there is a very specific rules when somebody dies on how you grieve. We're told how to grieve, what happens on the first day, then what happens on the 7 days, and then the 30 days, and then the year, and then you light a candle once a year. In certain holidays, you pray for the person who passes, right? It is very descriptive. And I think that we can all learn from there that there is a method to grieving, even though the feelings that each person feels is different. How much time each person needs to really come around to see the life again may differ, but there is an honoring of our grieving process that oftentimes it's disregarded because either we're embarrassed, we're ashamed. And I talk about that mostly not when somebody's dying. When somebody dies, it's very acceptable for us to be a mess. It is very acceptable to mourn. Some people will mourn longer, and it's acceptable. But we really lose so much in our lives that we're not taught how to grieve. Some people lose a job, and by losing a job, they lose their footing. They don't know how to pick up from there. They don't know how to move on. They don't know how to look for another job. Some people lose a relationship and the person is still living. I call it loss of the living. And there's really no guidance. How do you go through these emotions when there's no closure? There's always that hope, and then you don't get what you're hoping. So there is more disappointment.
Right.
There is so much that we go through in life that we're not taught how to grieve. And even though, like I said, people grieve differently, there is a healthy way of grieving. There is a time to grieve and honoring that loss. Some people say, oh, people go through worse things than me. I shouldn't.
Kind of downplay it.
Yeah, I downplay it. I shouldn't cry for this. There are people starving in Africa, so I shouldn't be upset that I lost something. And it doesn't work like that.
Wow.
So the first thing with Kintsugi, and I always tell my coaching clients to break something. I want you to break the ceramic, take a cup, I don't care, take something and go outside and throw it and break it. So there is a catharsis in breaking something and taking that bad energy out, but then start the process of what do I do with this brokenness? The first step in Kintsugi is to collect the pieces. And we need to start collecting our pieces, collecting ourselves again. Who were we before that? And figuring out what we're going to do with these pieces, right? Kintsugi becomes a puzzle. You need to put the pieces back together. So you need to find where the pieces belong. The same thing with us. We need to find ourselves. We need to decide who we want to be after this. Do I want to be the same person? Do I want to be different? So there is a very specific process of mending. You know, when you mend the ceramics, you have to file down the ceramic. So the glue is going to actually adhere. That's in our lives as well. Sometimes we have to remove people from our lives. Sometimes we need to work on our character, in our values, in how we talk and how we are as a human being. We have to take some vices out, change some habits. That takes time. The glue, you know, when you're gluing the ceramics, it's the new good habits that we're going to bring into our lives to become this person that we want to be, this Kintsugi piece that we want to be. And then, to me, is the hardest part. It takes a long time for this urushi. Urushi is the lacquer used in Japan. It comes from trees. It's a natural lacquer. It takes a long time for it to dry. And that's the time that a lot of people don't understand in Kintsugi, because you want to open it. You want to see it. You want to see, you want to add the gold, but it takes time, and it takes time for habits to become habits, right? You're implementing new things in your life. You change things, and now you have to do it over and over and over again until those things become part of you.
Yes. So just to understand, this lacquer, where does it go on the pottery? This is before the gold, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The gold is really an embellishment. The lacquer is what sticks the pieces of the ceramic together. And then it stays for a long time, a month sometimes. And
really?
For a piece of art, you can't do anything. You can't touch it. And if it's very broken, you can't glue multiple pieces at the same time. So imagine.
Really a long time.
Oh my God. Months. And it's fascinating because it teaches us that we cannot expect to heal into minutes. We will go through something. We have to honor that brokenness and honor the process of putting ourselves back together. The gold is at the very end, because even after you put lacquer, after you put the urushi, you have to file it down the excess, which is revisiting our lives, seeing who we became after we created our new life, right? And still we have to polish it. And
Yeah.
then you add the gold. To me, the gold is a fascinating part because in the healing, what I learned from interviewing so many people is that the gold, right? We are emphasizing what broke us.
Hmm.
Gold is what makes the piece really valuable. The Japanese used real gold.
Right. Is it
So
mixed with anything or it's just pure gold, like that's
it's
melted
powder.
down?
Yeah, they put a little bit of it's almost like a little glue where it was the broke, right? Because now it's together. Now you lacquer the pieces together. So you put a little bit of a specific glue,
Hmm.
and then you put the powder over it.
Mm.
And very difficult work. You were, because it's so expensive, so they can't just pour it all. It's
Mm.
a very specific process on how to do it. And then you brush it off and you try to collect from the table that powder. All of that,
As it's gold.
yeah, all of that has lessons also in itself. But the gold, what I find the gold in the healing is when a person is ready to use their whatever broke them to help others in the world. When you use your
Mm.
story, when you use your situation, your tragedy to help other people, when your problems become your purpose, your mess becomes your mission. So that's the gold, because the gold is emphasizing what's broken. And you are living a life that revolves around exactly what broke you. So I can give you some examples of women that I interviewed.
Sure.
So Kathy Stutter, she is an amazing woman. She's an author. She's definitely a Kintsugi sister. She knew about Kintsugi before I even met her.
Hmm.
She was sexually abused by her stepfather for years. And today she speaks on behalf of children. She writes for children. She writes for adults on sexual abuse.
Hmm.
And instead of hiding and forgetting and not wanting to show people that she was sexually abused, she says, no, I'm going to use this knowledge that I acquired through my experience to help
Hmm.
other people. So she's not hiding her brokenness. And that's the goal, right? She's helping other people survive and be guided when she didn't have that when she was a child.
That's beautiful.
Leslie Pitt, that's also a very interesting story. She was six
Hmm.
years old, playing by a neighbor's house. She ran home to get her favorite Barbie that she had forgotten, and a ice cream truck passes and hits her. And at 6 years old, she gets her leg amputated. She goes to become a professional skier,
Amputee.
amputee. Uh,
Wow.
and her life's project is to provide prostheses to kids in third world country. So she could be wearing long pants, hiding her this. She's a lawyer. She doesn't need to be doing this, but
Hmm.
and that's became her mission in life, to help children get prostheses. And I asked her, one of the questions that I asked her in my interview was, how do you feel about the person who hit you? And she said, Miriam, my lifelong dream is to find him and thank him and tell him that to not feel destroyed that he did this to me. It was
Hmm.
a mistake, it was an accident, and he gave meaning to my life. I'm like blown
That,
away.
that is unbelievable.
Yeah. So I've interviewed a lot of people, and those who thrive, those who did the process, who really healed, in some way, they all choose what's going to be their path, but they find a way to use their story to help other people. And I mean, if that's not empowering, what is? Is when we take control of our situation in a way is like, yeah, this was terrible. And yeah, I grieve and I am entitled to cry and be sad and suffer. And then I'm going to put myself back together, and then I'm going to help other people. And this horrible tragedy that happened to me becomes my reason for being.
Wow. So, what I see from what you're describing is actually a three-pronged healing process where it's the relationship of the person with themselves and their story and their pain and their scars. And then there's a relationship with a person who may have done it to them or the cause of their pain. And then there's their projection to other people in the future, their community around them that they help who may be in the same situation as them and they can help them. And I just find that to be all around so empowering because a lot of people will say, yes, I'm past what happened, but I can't look at the other person in the eyes. I can't forgive them. They don't deserve my forgiveness.
Okay, I'm so happy you brought this up. You have no idea. I have a chapter in my book about this. Forgiveness is probably the hardest concept in the entire Kintsugi process because it is a part. And forgiveness is not always towards somebody else because different adversities, some adversities have no culprit, right? Sometimes it's us. We have to forgive ourselves. Sometimes it's choices that we made that put ourselves in a difficult situation. So regardless, there is forgiving to be had. And it's a complicated topic. And I'll tell you why I think it's complicated. And that's my personal interpretation. I think that we're taught that forgiveness is atonement. So I can explain to you from being a Jewish religious woman.
Mm-hmm.
We go to the holiday of Yom Kippur, which is the judgment day, right? And we ask for atonement. We ask to be forgiven. And what do we want? What do we expect from that atonement is that, poof, our sins are going to go away and that we don't have to be responsible for them. We don't want to pay the consequences. And that's what we ask God. And in a way in Christianity and maybe in other religions is similar. We want to go to somebody and say, I'm sorry, we sinned. And then somebody's going to tell us, I forgive you. And you don't have to pay for those sins. And it's gone. And it's a blank slate. When it comes to human interactions, we don't want that. We want the other person to pay. I mean, that person needs to be responsible for what they did. So we connect forgiveness with atonement. So then it's difficult for us to forgive. Now, when people say forgiveness is the biggest gift you can give to yourself, I don't personally like this sentence because I think it puts the blame on the person who's hurting. It is your fault that you feel bad because if you just knew how to forgive, you would give yourself the biggest gift. What? We all want to give ourselves the biggest gift. But how do we reconcile the fact that somebody wronged us? How do we let go? And I believe that the correct word is let go and surrender. The word forgiveness is way too much connected to a free card, to atonement. And I think that letting go and surrendering is the kind of, that person wronged me, and that person is going to have to deal with the fact that he did something bad, just as I'm going to have to deal with the bad things that I have done in my life. I choose to not be connected with that person. I choose to say, you have hurt me. I am in pain from what you did to me. I'm sorry that you did that to me. I wish you hadn't done it. Whether you ask for forgiveness or not, I am severing this connection, which is my pain that's connected to you. That's what we need to do. Now, obviously, I've interviewed one person who forgave somebody who killed a family member, and they actually went to jail to visit them. It is a very high level to reach, to feel love. See, that's the difference.
To feel the love.
Feel the love for the person who hurt you. That is a very high level. Is it necessary for you to heal? No. What's necessary is for you to let go and surrender that you don't have to be the one responsible to ensure that that person gets punished. That's not for you. There is a higher power that's managing everything and who's going to demand of you to pay for the consequences of your actions and somebody else. So you're just letting go, letting God, saying goodbye to that person, and moving on with the healing process so you're not dragged down by that pain. When you feel love for people who did wrong, I mean, it's fireworks. It could be amazing. The people that I've spoken to that managed to do that, it catapulted them into an incredible level of feeling just so much love all around in their lives. So I'm not saying that it's not something to explore, but I think that there's a lot of work the majority of the people have to do before they can really, really feel that love. But I'm going to mention something because Steve Hardison, who is a coach, there's a book about him called The Ultimate Coach. I spoke to him privately and I told him something about my situation, which he has something similar in his life. And I asked him, how do you deal with that? And he just called me on the phone and he said, Miriam, I want you to read the book called The Gentle Art of Blessing. And the book, The Gentle Art of Blessing, says that we should go all day long blessing people. You can tell them to their face, I wish you a phenomenal day, health and happiness, success. Or you could just walk by somebody and just in your mind say, I hope that he arrives at home and there's harmony there, whatever blessing you want to do. And what happens when you bless people is that you start loving them. You're creating a connection of love and goodness and kindness. So after I read the book, I said how interesting it is to apply blessing people that had wronged you after you let go, not before. Once you were able to separate yourself, but if you want to achieve love, can you achieve love? Yes, you can. And one way would be by blessing that person. And I know people that had terrible relationship with a parent who were abused, but that they wanted because they felt love for the parent. It wasn't a logical love. It was the love just because they were their child, not because the behavior was so good. But they were able to make peace by using blessings.
Amazing. And talking about your fashion, how does that empower women to wear those clothes? Have you heard feedback from these women who something revolutionary happened when they're wearing your brand?
Devorah, I have to tell you something. And that's a confession. I have many days that I want to stop the fashion part of my business. Many days. And it seems that when I say out loud, that's it, I'm quitting. Then God goes, hold on a second, let me send you some testimonials. And then out of the blue, people start writing. And it happens every time. It's so annoying because I have been so close to saying enough. Let me focus.
Doesn't allow you to quit.
Doesn't allow you to quit. So there were many messages. Okay. But I'm going to tell you one that was there were two most impactful. I have to share those.
Go ahead. I want to hear.
The first one was a woman who writes to me the following message. She sends to me on Instagram and she says, hi, my name is so-and-so. You don't know me. I didn't even purchase a dress from you. I bought one of your dresses at a store. But I want you to know that your fashion is saving lives. And I'm going to tell you my story. I'm 27 years old. I had a double mastectomy and a hysterectomy because I have the BRCA gene. I don't remember if she had 2 or 3 kids, but I decided to do the preventative surgery because way too many women in my family passed away from cancer. I had my surgery a couple of weeks ago and I look at myself in the mirror and I just felt like dying. I am full of scars. I didn't feel like a woman. And then I needed to buy an outfit because she had that bag, that the drainage
Hmm.
bag.
Yeah.
And I needed something baggy enough, but not making me feel like I was wearing a sack. And I went
Hmm.
to the store and I found your dress and it fit perfectly and it was so soft. And then I got home and I read your tag and I read the explanation of Kintsugi. And suddenly my scars don't feel so terrible. And now I can look at my body full of scars, and what I see is a mother who chose to save herself so I could be here present for her children and her husband.
Wow.
And she said, I want you to know that I put your tag by my mirror and I read it every morning. And that is how I'm going by my day. And I just wanted you to know. Obviously, I framed a bunch of tags and I sent her a gift and I said, put it all over it in front of, in every place that you want to put it. It was just such a touching message. So that was one of them. The other message, this woman sends me a WhatsApp message. And the reason she had my cell phone was because she was in my VIP group. I created a VIP group and those women get bigger discounts and sometimes they can buy sample sales and they always get to know that there's going to be a sale before everybody else.
Hmm.
And it just became like this group that we have. So she was part of the VIP group. I didn't know her. She just bought my clothing. And
Hmm.
she leaves me an 11-minute message. And she is a facilitator, a healing facilitator. And she had done a retreat. And she told me that in the beginning, she does many retreats. And she told me that in the beginning, she just came wearing the outfit. Then
Hmm.
all of the facilitators started buying Kintsugi. Then the people who came second and third time, they all came wearing Kintsugi. And
Wow.
she ends her 11-minute message saying, hey, you don't know me, but I just wanted to tell you that one day you're going to die and you're going to go to heaven and you're going to be taken to the highest of heights and you're not going to understand why because you have no idea how many people are healing because they're learning about the message of Kintsugi.
Wow. I have tears in my eyes. That
Laura,
is so powerful.
I was bawling, and I'm happy to say that we became very good friends. And I just interviewed her on psychedelics this week. I, I
Hmm.
I interviewed her 3 times because she is a healing practitioner. She
Hmm.
does breath work. She's a hypnotherapist, and I like to bring to my show a lot of people that can show and teach different modalities because there is a lot of ways to get to the same place. It's all
Hmm.
it's all about the journey. It's all about
Absolutely.
there's no really getting there because even when you are healed, integrated, I prefer to call it, even when you are integrated, then the job begins. And how many times you're going to break again, you will. It's not going to break in the same areas. It's going to break in all new areas and you're going to have to do the work all over again.
Yeah. But as
It's,
long as you have the tools to go through it and you know that what I'm going through is part of me. It's going to be broken and I can fix it. I could pick up the pieces and find meaning and find healing. And it just brings new light to people's lives. Instead of going around and complaining and being bitter about it, it's like, what message is this for me? How can it help me grow and be a better person?
exactly.
How beautiful. There's actually a story that came to mind when you told me the second story, a story my father told years ago, and it resonated with me. I'm a very clean and neat person. And when people come into my house, I like when they take their shoes off. So he tells a story of this rabbi who comes to a town in Europe years ago, and he's a guest in someone's home. And many people in the town come to visit this rabbi for blessings. And at the end of the day, the host comes to the rabbi and says, I'm really happy to have you, but all these people are tracking and all this mud in my house. My house is dirty and it's really uncomfortable for me. I'm not happy. So the rabbi said, speak to me tomorrow. I hear what you're saying, sleep on it. Anyways, that night he has a dream. And in his dream, It was after 120, he had passed away and he was going up to heaven. And in heaven, they were weighing his sins and his good deeds. And the scale of his good deeds was weighing down. And then all of a sudden, the angel started coming in with all his sins, and the other side of the scale started weighing, and eventually it was weighing down more than the good deeds. And they were like, "Okay, done deal. Your sins were worse than your good deeds. I'm sorry." And before they were about to close the door, another angel comes with wagonfuls of mud and puts it on the scale and weighs down the good deed. So this mud of his welcoming guests in his house, that actually tipped the scale for him. And just imagine, I mean, I'm not a person to talk about after 120, but just imagine the gold that you are accumulating for yourself because you're empowering other people, other women, other men to heal themselves. And who knows if they, in turn, are using that gold, this method of Kintsugi, to help others as well. So what an honor that you have. It's just, you've been given this tool and look how you're using it.
Listen, I hope that I'm fulfilling my purpose. I mean, we all come to this world, right, for a purpose. We have a reason to be here. It's not to just wake up in the morning, do whatever we need to do, work and go to sleep and start the next day. There's something that we need to accomplish. And it's interesting, as a young child, I used to think a lot about that. Why did God put me on this planet? I was little. I was very young. I was less than 10.
You were a deep thinker back then.
Yeah. And I wanted to figure out, I want to know what my purpose is. And for many years, I used to think that I needed to open an orphanage. I didn't even realize that there, in these countries like America, Israel, England, you don't have orphanages. Kids go into foster care, right? It's not like in Ukraine you have, in places like that. In certain countries less developed, you still have where all the children are together. But in America, you put the kids in foster care. But I didn't think about that. I thought that my purpose was this. And it's interesting because as I grew older, this was so embedded in my mind that I used to think that's my job, because for so many years I thought the same thing. And then one day I sat with myself and I said, I'm so disappointed that I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And then I said, well, maybe that is not my purpose. That was a child that for some reason said that. And that's not my purpose. And then I realized how the stories we tell ourselves, even in childhood, impact our adulthood. Somebody can hear this story and say, that's so childish. Why me as an adult would be disappointed with myself for something that I said when I was a little kid? But the truth is that we do that all day long and twice on Sunday, right? We say how we expect ourselves to be as mothers. Should we be mothers?
Yeah.
That we need to have a certain degree, or we need to achieve a certain level of success in business by this age. We tell ourselves stories,
yes,
and lies and decisions that we make, and we live by them as if they are the whole truth. And then it takes something that happens in our lives that wakes us up and says, I don't know exactly what my purpose is. That I'm just going to do the best that I can. And I'm going to overcome the challenges that come my way. I'm going to work on being resilient. I'm going to work on being kind. And usually those two worlds merge on its own, very organically, without planning. When you you focus that you want to be a kind person and you just overcame something that you went through, there is this inner desire to help other people within that area, because it is an area of expertise.
It is.
Right? You become an expert in dealing with X pain, while other people don't have.
Ooh, I like that one. An expert from dealing with X pain. This definitely puts college degrees on the back burner.
Yes. I mean, yeah, listen, we should go after our dreams, right? We were given talents. Those are gifts. We should use these talents for good. But there is so many ways to achieve whatever we are here to achieve. So we
Absolutely.
shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. And that also goes back to that conversation we had earlier about forgiveness.
Mm,
I had to forgive myself for not opening an orphanage. That
that's
was
beautiful.
I had to let go of that dream.
Yeah. Do you have a vision for your brand for the next 5 years?
Yes. So I created a course. And right as I was about to launch my course, my husband had his first stroke and then his second stroke.
Oh,
And
I'm
then
sorry.
we found out he had a tumor. So we went through a 3-year period. And then I had to sell my house and move. I've moved 3 times in 6 months, and I'm
Wow.
about to move again. So we went through a period that I called my Yetziat Mitzrayim, my leaving of Egypt. I really feel that way. It was
Mm,
the word Mitzrayim is comes from the
Sar.
Sorosh Meitzar, that very narrow passage. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt that in the last few years. The course is ready, but hasn't been released.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some guilt that I have to work on forgiving myself because I wasn't just playing at the beach, I was dealing with a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
it's very important for me that release this course. I am working on a specific platform that I want to release the course because I would like to make this healing process accessible to more people that cannot afford a coaching weekly practice one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
I want very much to grow my coaching practice. I've been holding out until I move into my house uh,
Mm-hmm.
because we had to sell. I had to sell my forever home, and we're finishing up the place where we're going to be moving to that's more stable. So once
Mm-hmm.
there, I want to start growing the coaching practice. And as far as Mikah, until now, I was extremely focused on selling to stores. And what happens is because I do a lot of the same prints, Kintsugi prints, some stores that I sell already for a very long time, they don't want to keep buying because they feel that, okay, I had it
Yeah.
for years. So I want to start promoting the Kintsugi part of the collection direct to consumer and
Mm-hmm.
not sell it to other stores. So eventually it wouldn't be available in any stores but buying directly from us,
Mm-hmm.
and create a separate collection that may have a hint of kintsugi, an embroidery, a message, something, but something more subdued with regular styles so that I can continue growing the fashion side of the business that way. So there's a lot in the works. There's a lot that I have already done that haven't been deployed. Mikah Fashion is going to become part of this umbrella called the Mikah Company. The Mikah Mikah Fashion is one element, and Heal with Gold is the other. And under Heal with Gold, there's another book that's going to come out. There's going to be the course, the coaching, maybe group coaching, and speaking engagements. So there's a lot happening.
That's amazing. I'm so happy you listed all those things so that my listeners can really know all of your accomplishments that you've done before and what's really coming up in the future. Before we end off, Miriam, is there one last message you want to share with my listeners? Some one nugget of gold that you can let them kind of just resonate with them for the rest of the day?
When adversity happens to us, we say, this is so bad. This is so bad. This is so bad. And I want your listeners to reframe it. Instead of saying this is so bad, to say this is so hard. And start trying to find where is the good in this situation. Because there is good. It is very, very hard, and it is very, very painful, but it's not necessarily bad. And if we stop talking terribly negative about our situations, we will be able to find the light with more ease. I asked one of the women I interviewed, a woman who went through many, many tragedies in her life, including her son committing suicide, just so you have an idea of perspective here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, people say God gives you what you can handle. And I hate that sentence because when I'm in my pain, when I go through my adversity, I cannot handle. And I don't believe that I can handle. And I get annoyed when people tell me that I can handle. And I said to her, tell me what you think. And she said something that changed the way I see this situation. She said, Miriam, obviously you were not given what you can handle, because what you can handle is already part of you. What you can't handle expands you. That's the growth. Today you can't handle, you're going to go through this painful process of expansion. It hurts to expand, and then you can handle. And then most likely the next adversity is something else that you cannot handle. And that is pushing you to grow and to become wiser, stronger, better, more unique, more beautiful person.
Yeah.
And that I can accept. And that in itself is good. It's hard, but it's good.
Beautiful. That was just such a potent punchline and a great way to end this episode. One last thing before we end off, if you can tell my listeners how they can reach you, if they want to reach out to you personally, if they want to know more about your brand, or if they want to know more about your messaging.
Sure. So the fashion website is mikahfashion.com, and Mikah is Mikah. And I just want to say what that means. This is an acronym for who is God, who is like God. Mi kamocha Hashem. So that's what it stands for.
Wow.
You can email me at sales@mikahfashion.com. You can see a little bit of information at the Heal with Gold website. It's not healwithgold.com. It's not finished, but you can see some work there. I have a Facebook group called Heal with Gold. We have over 1,000 women in that group. It's for women only.
Is that open for anyone?
Anyone who wants to join. I have a YouTube channel where all the interviews that I do that are live interviews are housed. It's youtube.com/mikahfashion.
Okay.
So I think that one of these ways you can friend me on Facebook too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This was just an incredible interview. I think you're just full of light, full of gold, full of wisdom that really empower women and empower anyone who's going through something that they want to see the light at the end of it, empower themselves, empower others. So thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you are loving the Spark by Hollywood podcast, kindly leave me a 5-star review on the platform that you're listening on. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Sparked by Hollywood. That's where the conversations happen. That's where I give you extra content on all my episodes, and where you can send me your feedback, your comments, and questions. And finally, in a world where we are all enamored by the spark of Hollywood and its celebrities, always remember your own spark that you carry within you, that makes you the gift that the world needs to shine that much brighter. I'll catch you in the next episode.